So the more we give capacity and space for the body, communication to come from the body up and respond, the body will start trusting us and giving us more feedback in ways that will allow us to feel at ease. And with this sense of ease present, instead of a fight, freeze, fawn, fix, activated state, there's so much more is possible.
Okay, be honest. How much time do you spend listening to your body? Do you pause to listen to the important signals it is sending you? Now, I have to admit, I am not great at this, but what would happen if you paused and really started paying attention so you could identify what you truly needed? Hi, this is Diana Bernal with Corner Office Latinas. I'm a career strategist who guides ambitious Latinas through major career moves so you can reach your goals. Today, I speak with Emma Pineda Fortin. Emma is a Somatic Leadership Coach at Guerrera de la Cruz Coaching. She specializes in guiding women of color in finding and trusting their own voice by connecting with their bodies. Now, our conversation has a lot of thoughtful suggestions, so you might want to come back and listen to this one over and over again whenever you need it. Let's jump in. Hi, Emma. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Diana. It's a pleasure.
Well, we often see articles and trainings about how to ask for help, but you take a step back with your clients in really identifying what we need first. So talk a little bit about helping people identify what they need first.
Especially with the clients that I work with, which is people of color and women, we don't have a lot of practice in really knowing what's happening in us. And so when I do see these like calls to action, like speak up, ask for what you need, I've noticed in my clients that there's a hesitance there just because there's a difficulty to even knowing what it is that we need when we're day in, day out, focusing outward. What does our family need? What do our peers need? And so with this outward focus, it's very difficult to even know what it is that we need. So my coaching helps clients look back in, always come back to them, come back to what's happening in the moment, what's happening in them, to gain this skill really of what is it that's lacking? What is it that's extra? And what is it that's just right inside?
Yeah. And you mentioned working with people of color and women in particular. And I would imagine that a lot of us Latinas have a tough time finding the time to prioritize ourselves or to give ourselves permission to think this way. So talk a little bit about that socialization that has been the case for years and how women can work through that.
Well, it's a radical notion to be selfish. It's really radical. We were brought up, we were socialized, both culturally as Latinas, as women, to be there for others, to be kind, to be giving, to be nurturing, all of which are wonderful things to be. And somebody forgot along the way that it is okay to take care of us. Not
Right.
just okay, but it is necessary. And not just necessary to be of service to others. Like there's this notion that I've been hearing of like, it's okay to take care of you so you can be there for your kid or so you can be there for your partner.
Yeah.
It's just okay to take care of you for you. So there's this radical like shift in understanding of what is allowed and permitted and what is possible for us. And so as Latinas, my invitation is to step out of that socialization, step out of that cycle of giving and being and giving to oneself for another to just, hey, these are arbitrary rules and some of them are not serving you.
Yeah.
Some of them might work with your own essence and your own way of being, and that's wonderful. Adopt these rules, but some of them are not serving you. So how about we do it a little differently?
Well, let's talk about those symptoms because so much of it ends up in the body And I think you and I have talked about that. So how can women start paying attention to what's happening in their body as a sign that they need to shift, that they need to redirect?
The body always knows.
Yeah.
So everything is happening in the body. Everything is stored in the body. Oftentimes your joints store a lot of emotion and energy. And because we haven't been taught or modeled to look within, to like pause long enough from our doing to just being, to notice like, oh, there's a twitch here. There's a subtle twitch. There's a subtle pain. There's a subtle itch. The body's always giving us messages. And oftentimes we don't notice until it's screaming,
Right.
until we have an autoimmune disorder, until there's this big flare up, until we're like run down and, with burnout. It's like extreme body screaming.
Right.
And so one way to realize what your needs are is to pause and to notice what is present in your body at the moment. And that is actually a very difficult skill to practice on your own because we're not used to it. So as a coach, as a somatic coach, I guide you step by step, little steps. It's like, how about you bring your awareness to this part of your body? What's present here? What is? And how do you hold that with curiosity rather than judgment or control, which is what we've been socialized into. Do everything with a goal in mind.
Right.
But the body, there is no goal. It's just what is present here and what information does that give me to get to know my current state better.
Yeah. And Emma, you yourself have gone through a big career change. Can you tell us a little bit about how you ended up here?
Yes. So I come from a very intellectual family. Like they're in the medical field and they're doers. And I followed that path for a while because, again, I led my life externally based. So I came into this world, came to this family, came into my Latina culture, and I said, okay, these are the ways that I need to live. And the way that I'm set up, I followed the path laid out for me. I became a chemical engineer. I'm an immigrant. So I'm from Honduras, came to the US at 18, chemical engineering. Then I got a PhD in biomedical engineering. And after that, I went into software consulting for healthcare companies for 6 years. And so very technical, very scientific, very analytical career path, but also life path. And in parallel, while I was doing all of this technical work, I realized that something was missing for me. And I first encountered yoga. And in the practice of yoga, I started noticing, I was like, oh, my body has something to say to me. I can realize poses that feel good, poses that feel uncomfortable. I can start noticing what my own body physical boundaries are. And that's really the time where I started to walk into this whole somatic piece and coaching piece. And now I've fully gone into being a somatic leadership coach through first my coaching practices, then my somatic coaching training. And now I'm a bridge. So a lot of my clients are either in the medical field or in technical fields and engineering and are looking for the same, like are looking for this complementary way of being where our analytical brain can coexist with our body and our heart.
Yeah. And you found that. So that's so interesting that many of your clients are probably where you were many years ago,
Yes.
Right? So how can people find the confidence to take this on or maybe the permission to take this on? Because I think of a lot of us might get stuck with, that this isn't the right path, or how do people build the confidence to do these things?
I think that people will know. They will know when they hear, I was like, oh, what does my body have to contribute to this? When you hear this question, there are people that their nature is geared towards connecting more with their body, and they'll be called into this work when they're ready. And I think that it's not for everyone. Like some people will be like, I'm not sure what that is. I'm not quite ready. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
I think that we need to learn to trust because that's part of it. That intuition of like, this particular tool is for me. This particular tool will help me in gaining confidence in everything or not. So it's coming back to trusting the self.
When you talk about what people need, it's not just the practical of, oh, I need a new job or I need a new place to live. It's, I need courage or I need independence, or is it both of those things?
It's both of those things. And the way that you get to either of these big things, like a career chef,
Right.
or I need to focus my intention in practicing courage, is by smaller practices, smaller everyday practices of noticing what's happening in the moment. Oh, I feel thirsty. I feel the impulse for thirst, and responding and taking that sip of water,
Yeah.
even if it's inconvenient.
Ooh,
So it's this
interesting.
practice
Yeah.
of noticing and then responding to your body in the moment as quickly as you can, so that your body and you start creating this reciprocal relationship. Oftentimes, when we start with the brain, it's top down. It's like the brain tells the body what to do, the body does. The body moves, the body grabs water, the body runs, the body goes to the gym. And we've forgotten there's two-way feedback.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of messages that started the body, right? The autonomic nervous system. We don't think about digestion. We don't think about our organs being alive. And that nervous system is completely interconnected with our beingness and our mood and our ability to express emotions. So the more we give capacity and space for the body communication to come from the body up and respond, the body will start trusting us and giving us more feedback in ways that will allow us to feel at ease. And with this sense of ease present, instead of a fight, freeze, fawn, fix, activated state, there's so much more is possible. Your curiosity, you can see more possibility in the world.
Yeah. So is it like a muscle that we need to flex a little bit and start building that muscle of responding to our own bodies?
That's one way to look at it. Yes. A practice.
Well, you hit an interesting one when you even used the example of thirsty, because I think of everyone listening to this podcast and how we race through lunch. We are too busy. We don't give ourselves the time to take lunch. We don't pay attention to our bodies. And that has then a ripple effect throughout the day. And I think that's one place where people need to stop and give themselves a break.
Yes.
So many women eating at their desk, right? Because we don't have time. And so we don't pay attention to what the body needs.
Yes. And you don't pay attention to what the body needs. You don't allow for the nutrients in whatever meal you've picked, whether it's nutrient dense or not nutrient dense.
Yeah.
They can both nourish you if you're just slow enough to notice.
Yeah. So when we start realizing what we need, let's then talk about the next step about asking for it, because there will come a time when you need to ask either your partner or your boss for something. Let's talk about that communication and how we need to practice that.
Absolutely. So once you have some awareness, once you've built some awareness of what it is that you actually need based on you rather than expectation or the past, then you have the opportunity to communicate it. And first, you need to decide what your values of communication are. Just like we define life values, you can communicate things differently. In my case, kindly and clearly come up a lot. And so I want to communicate whatever comes up in me in a kind and clear and succinct way. So those three things, those are my values for communication. And when you're just starting to speak up and starting to express your needs, I recommend that you do so with someone that you already have built trust with.
Yeah.
Okay. In the context of attachment theory, someone that you feel securely attached with. So someone that you have some history of expressing difficult emotions and being heard and received by them. We don't all have that person in our life, and it's usually not our partner or a parent or a child. It's usually like a dear friend or someone that we may need to hire, like a therapist or a coach. And so the first place to practice this is with someone that you trust and feel securely attached to, so that you're not wounded right off the bat.
Yeah.
When you practice that some and you feel confident, Then it's the muscle of courage. How do I expand this skill that's growing to people that I have no idea how they're going to respond? This is the case of your manager, your boss, an acquaintance maybe. And in that scenario, that's when you add more skills, the boundary setting skill.
Yeah.
So the boundary of this is my truth to share, and knowing the division of responsibility, that how it is received by the other, whether it's welcoming, celebrating, or shut down or anger, is not mine. How do I sit with the discomfort of not knowing what's coming?
Yes. And let's talk a little bit more about that, because when you and I were originally getting ready for this call, that's one of the things that I think really resonated for me is I can't control someone else's response, or how to not let someone else's response bring me down. And I think that's so common because we care what people think. And if we're asking for something and this is a new muscle we're flexing, it might be awkward and uncomfortable. So help us with the concept of worrying about what other people think or what they're going to say. And especially if you do get an answer that is not ideal.
Yes. So this comes back to like knowing what you're energetic. This is an energetic and an emotional boundary. It's not a physical boundary, but you know that your energy and your emotions are yours, and the energy of emotions of the other are theirs. Because we're empathic humans, there's sometimes this transfer of energy. So that feeling of like, oh, or rejection of like, oh, that doesn't feel good when someone expresses anger, is because we're human. And we can come into these conversations doing some grounded work in ourselves, defining our space, our emotional and energetic space, and our confidence of speech, and then coming into this experience with this energetic boundary set, also setting ourselves up to be in an environment with someone that is supportive and kind right after. So if we know that we're going to walk into something and we don't know how they're going to respond, have this person, being, or place that supports your essence and supports your energy booked right after. So in my case, I love the outdoors and I love breathing. And so if I know I'm going to have a difficult conversation, which in my world I call courageous conversations,
Yes.
if I'm going to walk into a courageous conversations, I'm going to have a time blocked right after to go for a walk and breathe on my own, to really resource myself and remembering and reminding myself of what is mine and what is another's.
Yeah, I love that resource. You and I talked about this too, identifying sort of what fills us up. You know, is it talking on the phone with a girlfriend? For you, it's going outside. Maybe for me, it's playing with my dog. I think people need to think through and sort of have at the ready 2 or 3 things that they can go to, because if they don't, then sometimes people fall into the trap of alcohol, food, all the bad things, the numbing that supposedly is supposed to cover up the feeling. But when you cover up feelings that are bad, you also cover up feelings that are good.
And you unfortunately feed into shame.
Oh, yeah.
So when you cover anything, you're just feeding shame about what was expressed, feeding shame of what you didn't get.
So much of what you're saying is starting with baby steps, you know, finding the safe people, those safe conversations of asking for what you need once you've done some work to identify what that might be. So let's talk about the success. Like, how do we celebrate that? Because I think some people might say, oh my God, that worked. And we'll find ourselves surprised and like not know what to do with ourselves. Like, oh, wow, that conversation went really great. So how do we emphasize that and reinforce it?
I think again, it comes back to noticing. So like, if you have that realization, it's like, oh, I expressed something and it was received positively. Like, can you take the time to pause and notice what excitement and what joy or whatever the feeling that's evoked in you after this positive experience? Like, what happens in your body? What happens in your heart? Oftentimes for me, all these emotions, actually both joy and grief happens in the heart for me. And so like, what is the sense? What is the sensation? And see if you can name it, put a word to what's happening in your body as you have this elated experience. And can you pause to sit with that feeling a little bit longer? Because we're always on the go, we're on the go with the emotions that are difficult, but we're also on the go with the emotions that are joyful.
Yeah.
And we don't get to like really savor them.
I was just thinking of the word savor. That's exactly the word that came to mind.
Yeah.
And it's so much of what you've talked about too is pausing, which is so hard for us. I wonder if building in a pause, I don't know if that's too artificial, but sometimes I'll set a reminder on my phone, like for 4:45 to just kind of stop where I am and kind of see what's going on. I mean, are there little tips and tricks that you can recommend for people to give themselves that time to pause or to start having some of these thought process for themselves?
I think the beginning of the day is often the most hectic for me. I have a 4-year-old child, and it's also the time where it can be the most useful just to take a breath for me.
Mm-hmm.
So like as you're waking from dream state, from nighttime, see if you can just center in your own energy and pause. And I think it doesn't have to be, a full-blown 20-minute meditation.
No.
30 seconds, 2 breaths just for you to start your day. And start with that.
Yeah. Breathing meditations, even if it's a 2-minute meditation, it starts you somewhere. And I know so often for me, I'll set the meditation timer for 5 minutes and I know my mind will wander, but you know what? At least I'm there. And even if my mind does wander, I'm giving myself a little bit of a break. And I often find journaling for me is extremely helpful. And I'm thinking that you probably recommend some type of practice like that for some of your clients, so that way they can keep track of what's happening and see the patterns, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's not just a one-off. It's what the pattern is that each of us brings, and then we start to recognize it. But it must take a long time or some amount of time for people to really accept and grapple with these things.
Yes, it takes months to unwind some of what has been learned, and then really years to make the new neuronal pathways of a different way of being. Because what I'm inviting people towards, what I'm inviting you towards, is a different way of being and relating to yourself.
Well, this is so extremely helpful because we do have to give ourselves permission to identify what we need. And you're right. It's not about the airplane analogy when we say when the oxygen mask drops down, oh, we need to put ours on first so we can help other people. No, we just need to put our oxygen mask on. Period. I think that just get your own oxygen mask. So what are some of the simple tools that they're driving home, they've listened to this podcast, they're like, oh my gosh, Emma's so amazing. And I know you're going to give us your socials and your website, but 1 or 2 things that someone can easily do at home to start them thinking this way.
To your point of creating a tangible list of resources, I would sit down, I would write down places, activities, beings, because it can be pets, people that nourish your own energy, that bring you back to yourself, to this feeling of feeling whole and at ease. Once you have that handy, pick one a day. Like, which of these am I going to sit with today? And make it a daily practice. Because coming back to the idea of this is a practice, this is a muscle, this is literally not even a muscle. I like to think of it as new neuronal connections in your brain. This is neuroscience. Like when you're a kid, your brain is super like jello, like everything is new and there's neuronal connections everywhere. As we age, we start getting stiffer and stiffer, more like cement. There is still neuroplasticity. We can still create new pathways, new habits, and new ways of being. We just need to tell our brains, this is important to me now.
Yeah.
This is where I would like to focus. I want to make these neuronal connections stronger and stronger. So having that list and picking one a day doesn't even have to be the same one. But knowing that, coming to you and having that feeling of like, this is what my own energy feels like. This is what feels good to me. And coming back every day.
Yeah. And some consistency. And after a while, I think people have to give it a chance. This is not overnight. This is not a weekend activity alone that's going to create an epiphany the next day, but like day after day, week after week. And then you'll start to notice some internal shifts, I would hope.
Yeah. You won't even know it's happening until you notice. You're like, whoa, what was that? It'll be hard to recognize yourself and be like, Whoa.
Yeah. Do others notice it before we notice it in ourselves?
It depends on how perceptive the people around you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know I can tell if I haven't journaled for a few days, and I try and journal every morning for 3 pages. And sometimes I'm in a hurry and I only have maybe a page. But if I have 2 or 3 days where I haven't journaled, I can feel my harmony is off, my balance is off. And I say, okay, first thing I'm going to do tomorrow morning is I'm going to journal, or maybe I journal at night to pick it up there. So I guess the point there is find it where you can. And if it takes a while, that's okay. Again, to give ourselves permission to know that this is a practice. Just like you mentioned, yoga. Yoga is a practice. You never fully achieve maximum yoga. You do it. You do it to rejuvenate your body, your mind, and to make those connections. And so all of these things that you're talking about are ongoing. Emma, this has been so helpful. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Luz Leadership Coach and at my website, luzleadership.com. You can sign up for my newsletter and I'll let you know when I have free workshops, which I host about every 2 months.
Well, I'll include those in the show notes. Thank you again, Emma. This has been so helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Diana.
Take care.
You too.
Thank you for listening. For more, visit cornerofficelatinas.com, where we give you the framework, inspiration, and support you need to reach and thrive in the corner office. We have some free downloads on the website, where you can also sign up for our e-news, so we can keep you posted on workshops and events coming up that you will not want to miss. That's cornerofficelatinas.com. See you next week.